Okay, welcome everyone. We are happy you've joined us today for our webinar, Awesome Email Designs Anyone Would Love and How You Can Create Them for Your Business. My name is Ali Fisher and I'm the Marketing Operations Manager here at iContact, and I'll be your host and moderator today. Okay, and before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you experience any audio issues, please let me know by typing a comment into the question box and I'll see what I can do to help you. It will be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so if you have additional questions for our presenters, type them in the questions box and we'll try to get through as many as we can. And if we run out of time, don't worry, we're keeping a log of all your questions and we will address them in an email or blog post later. And finally, we are recording today's session and we'll be sending a link to it as well as links to the slide deck and any follow-up information to all registrants in about 2 to 3 business days, so early next week. So while we hope you can stay with us the entire time, if you do have to leave early, you won't miss anything. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Today we have John Thies and Jerry Pemberton sharing their expertise with us. John is the CEO and co-founder of Email on Acid, a service that gives email marketers a preview of how their emails are displayed in the most popular email clients and mobile devices. His career passion is helping marketers send perfect emails. John also serves as CEO of Cause for Awareness, a recently formed nonprofit that empowers other nonprofit organizations with digital marketing resources. He resides in Denver, Colorado with his wife and son. Jerry is the manager of design services at iContact. He has been with iContact for 10 years, starting with technical support, and now runs a team of 5 graphic designers who specialize in digital marketing with an emphasis on email design and development. And with that, I'll hand it over to John Jerry.
Hello, this is Jerry. I'm glad that you're all here, and I hope you find this to be informative. So let's get started with email strategy. I want you to ask yourself, where am I right now? How are my messages performing? Are they getting the engagement that I expect? Am I giving our subscribers a chance to act on them? A well-designed email is key for well-performing emails. So let's get started with email strategy. Good strategy is where you want to start. So let's get going on that. A couple questions to ask yourself. These questions will inform you on how you should design emails that engage your subscribers. And not all of these questions will apply all the time, but they're all good things to kind of run by yourself as you're about to start send out a new message or to launch a new campaign. Number one is, who is the audience? Who is the message intended for can tell you what kind of email that you should send. Is it a new customer? A welcome series that educates the new customer on the most popular, most useful parts of your application is a great thing to send. Is it a repeat customer? Perhaps you have a loyalty points program. You can send them emails to update them on how many loyalty points they have and what they can get from that. Or maybe you'd want to have a sale just for your most loyal customers. Students or young people, make sure that your messages are mobile responsive, since they are probably being read on a mobile device by a younger audience. Do you have an older clientele, senior citizens? Make sure that all parts of the email are readable for those older eyes. Bigger fonts, easy to read fonts, don't go anything too fancy at all. And create large call to action buttons that are easy to tap on or to click, and make sure to use contrasting colors for those older eyes. What are your goals for the campaign or this one message? Are you marketing a new product? Email should be tightly focused on that new product to keep the focus on that and not sell anything else. Maybe don't have any navigation that would get people to click away from what you're trying to sell. Are you soliciting donations for your nonprofit? Keep the email again focused on that aim. Easy to see and easy to click or tap call to action buttons. show how your organization is helping, what you're doing with these donations. Are you trying to get more people to sign up for your social media accounts like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? Make that the main theme of the email, and make sure you also share what the benefits of following you on Facebook or Instagram is going to be. I know a lot of people have a Facebook only sale where that's the only place that they mention that sale. So you want your subscribers, your customers to be a part of that. Um, Maybe you're pushing a webinar like this. Again, easy to see and clickable or tappable call to action buttons that lead to the sign up page. Since that's the whole point of those emails, to get people to sign up, you want to get them to the sign up page as quickly and easy as possible. What key qualities differentiates your company from your competitors? Perhaps you're a local alternative to a national chain. Uh, it seems like these days, people are more supportive of a local business. They will choose that over a national chain, especially if the local business will meet or exceed the national chain quality, whether it's food or handbags that you make. Um, are your products of a higher quality? Express that in the message. Maybe make use of professional photography and use inspiring photos. Are is your customer service the best? Eye Contact prides itself on having a high level of customer service. Our people is what makes the difference for Eye Contact, and you can see that on our website. We like to show actual photos of actual of employees. So we're proud of our people. Um, how do you want your customer to feel? And this may seem like kind of an odd question to ask yourself, but if you really think about it, people act based on emotion. If that wasn't true, you wouldn't see funny or inspiring or sometimes sad TV commercials during the Super Bowl. Um, do you maybe want to make them feel inspired? Maybe you are a fashion retailer. You want to make use of imagery that would inspire someone to wear your summer line all season long. Do you want them to feel confident about your product? A new customer could benefit from a welcome series that seeks to educate new users on a product that they just purchased or subscribed to. You want to show that you're a leader in this industry. You want to flex your thought leadership. Do you have an active blog or social media account? Send subscribers to them so that they can continue to learn through your leadership and your ideas.
Awesome.
And
Thanks, Jerry. And so I'll follow up on that too, is in kind of all that strategy is vital for what you're going to do. And when we get into design building blocks, because what happens is that information you're going to need to know it, because that's how you're going to build these basic building blocks. So you want to really anticipate, hey, what content are we sending out? What messages are we going to do? So then you can come in and build templates. And that's what I'm going to talk to you guys real quick about, is templating and using modules within those templates. Because we all know that email, like designing emails in the world that I live in, making sure that they render properly can be a daunting task, can be very difficult. And so what I want to talk to you guys about is making it easier for you so that you're not spending as much time doing the design process, but actually, or the rendering process, but actually really get in there and doing what you want to do from a marketer and triggering those emotions and trying to inspire people and engage people to try to click on links and whatever you're trying to send them. Okay? And when we talk about that, you think about the basic building blocks. You might have a footer, a header, right? A hero image and all that type of stuff. And so like templates can really bridge all that together. And that's where you come into saying, okay, well, I want this template. This is going to be our style guide, like taking your style guide, building that template, and then testing that template and kind of putting it all together, right? You go and you test it and say, okay, this makes sense, this works. And I don't know if you guys, a lot of you are familiar with what the concept of modular design is, but it's taking that template and then breaking it out, breaking it into pieces, kind of like Lego blocks. So you have an email where you have all these blocks of content, and it might be, a hero image, it might be the header, it might be the footer, it might be 3 columns, right? You might have 3 columns in your email that you want to have that, so you can break that out into modular. So then when you go and create and you think about the strategy of the email and you think about what the customers want, what they need, what the message is getting across, you can take those pieces, those Lego blocks, and put them together inside that template that you already created, and then you already have your email built. And obviously you'd want to test at the very end. And so here's kind of like an example of that, is where you have these building blocks. So the same concept here is you might have that, the building block of this, oh my guard, right at the top, that's a module. The hero image is a module. And then as you can see how it's different in the middle. So you have a module of the seasonal decor. That's one particular content. Now you just take that module and you stack it on top of each other. If you want more, you want less. And so maybe you might have a stack of that on top. Then you might have a 3 column, and then you might have that additional 1 column below it. So it's a way that you can easily, quickly go in and take the template and modify it to the needs of what this campaign's all about. And it might be a transactional, it might be a newsletter, it might be all these other things that you really want to take into account about what's the content for. And by doing that, you're going to save yourself time, energy. You're going to create more effective campaigns, to be more on a brand, and to have that consistency, that consistent feel of what your subscribers expect from you. And it's really kind of interesting from a brand side is how subscribers really get used to what brands do, and transitioning that from what they're used to, there can be some disruption there. And so allowing you to use templates and modules will help you keep that consistency throughout.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Yeah, so in this section, I would like you to notice how we've made use of modules in the upcoming designs. So what you'd like to do is have a good idea is to have a template that features varying layouts to meet whatever goal of your current message or campaign. So make use of those modules so you can easily add columns if you need, or remove columns. So the different types of like layouts, that you can that you might want to send out would be like a promo layout. Like if you have a sale campaign for a new product or for a closeout product, you can focus on that, or a Cyber Monday sale, right, where you have one main product and then you can slide in some other associated products. If you have a blog and you want to make sure that you want people to keep checking out your blog, so you send out an email featuring your latest blog posts, and you can easily see here the whole idea of modules here. Look at each article in this email points to a different blog post, and what we have is we've got an image for that blog article, a headline, some text, and then a call to action link to get people over to your blog. And if you think about it in a modular way, it makes it very easy to add more articles or even take away articles. Then, of course, there's the good old-fashioned newsletter layout. Same thing here, where you can make use of columns if you'd like. You'd like to send out a newsletter to, I know, town governments. We have quite a few town governments that make use of our software, and they're of course always going to send out a monthly newsletter about the latest and greatest news of what's happening in their town, including upcoming events in their town. And as you can see, the modules here. One thing to keep in mind about newsletters, I think, is it doesn't have to be just purely informational. You can still prompt people to your website. Like if you have a fun run coming up, your organization is sponsoring a fun run in your town. Definitely, it doesn't have to be just the when and where. in the email and then leave them there, you can put in a call to action button there to have people sign up for that fun run. So the whole point of an email is to get people to prompt people into an action, right? So even with newsletters, you can do that. E-commerce layouts, again, you can make use of modules with each product. You can use just a few modules to keep the e-commerce layout tightly focused on a single product. You can have another version of the message that features more products. You can even split test. We have quite a few clients that split test their e-commerce messages to find out, are people actually scrolling down all the way down to the bottom to the last product in that message, and you are trying to generate sales, so test. And then, so one theme, many layouts. iContakt's drag and drop message editor has many themes to choose from. And when you choose a theme like this one here called Lovely, once you choose that theme, you'll see there are many different layouts that you can choose from. And this is just 3 of the available layouts for the Lovely theme. I think there's probably 12 altogether there. So it's good to have sort of an arsenal of different layouts, but all with matching themes that are branded to your company, and it just makes your life a lot easier if you already have them created. So the next message you need to send out, you can just grab one of those pre-made layouts and move your modules around, add modules, take away modules, whatever is easiest for you. And just to let you know that we have quite a few themes already available for the message editor, but my team is always creating more. So by the end of this year, we'll have quite a few more themes to choose from.
Awesome. Yeah, and when we talk about design too, I think a big piece of it is accessibility. And I think this is something that designers necessarily don't always think about. And what I want to do is just kind of really get to a point where we're mindful of it, and really, like, why is it important? And and we get, it might not be the sexiest topic, like this guy. I mean, this is this is hot. But anyway, it's might not be the sexiest thing, but it's really, really, really important. And we want to be able to make sure that everyone that receives our email can engage with it, can communicate with it, and understands what the message is. And so there's a bunch of stuff, but I'm really going to kind of focus on the visual side of it. And just put some statistics out there, is that there's 330 million people that are visually impaired worldwide. And to put that into context, there's 325 million people in the United States. So if we're not thinking about it, we're neglecting an entire market of people out there that could be interacting with our brand. That could be, we could be helping out. Maybe it's something they need or want. If they get the email and they can't interpret it, they can't read it, they're never going to engage with it. And that's what I want to talk to you about. And also to put some more fiscal numbers on it. Those with some form of disability, it could be temporary, it could be permanent, have over $1 trillion in disposable income. And so that can be impactful too if you need to go to management and say, hey, we need to start doing this. Put some numbers around it and tell them, show them the impact, inform them of it. And that's what I want to try to do with everyone today. And I want to kind of just go through some examples of disabilities, and they kind of go all in shapes and sizes. And like I just mentioned a minute ago, it could be permanent. We're using a wheelchair, you're using something else, or it could be temporary. I remember when I was a kid, and this was a long time ago, before we had mobile phones and everything, my dad, he broke both his thumbs. And so if both of your thumbs are broken, you're going to need some type of assistance with a mobile device or even with the computer. Because I remember he had casts on his hands. Like, how do you type with that? And so it's not always just thinking about that permanent disability, but it could be that temporary. And just kind of go through some visual stuff. Here's an example of low liquidity. And this right here is a great email, interactive email from an agency called eRoy. They're based in Portland, Oregon. But if you have low liquidity, you can't tell, because what's really interesting, that little dot there in the middle in the water, it's actually a plus sign, and you click on that and another pop-up shows up. And it gives more context about why this guy's standing there by the water. And it's a really good email. Unfortunately, someone with low liquidity can't really engage with that. Now, Is there something that Eroy could have done with this? No, not really. But what I'm just trying to do is just show you some examples. And the next one is ghosting. Okay? I couldn't imagine walking around and viewing the world this way, where you see the double layers on top of each other. Again, not really much you can do from a visual perspective, but this is where it comes into kind of like the screen readers and how, in the coding of it, and how do the screen readers read your emails. In cataracts, this one's very kind of well known out there, but this is how someone would engage with Xfinity if they have cataracts. And this next one is really impactful because it's all about dyslexia. I'm sure all of us on this webinar know someone has dyslexia or who's dyslexic, but this really shows an example of what it's like. Like, how do they read? I couldn't imagine reading this content. Like, take a second and just try to read the first sentence. It takes a lot of concentration, and it would be hard. So that's just something that we need to understand. And how is someone going to interpret that? How is the screen reader going to interpret it? And then we look at from more of the visual aspect, like the colors. The three main colors that people generally can't see when they're colorblind is either red, green, or blue. And so how do they interpret the world with that? I don't know if some of you remember when Heinz tried to create green ketchup. Really bad experience. People didn't react very well. But just think about it. Think about if the ketchup is yellow or ketchup is brown. How are you going to interact with that? What's the world going to look like to you? And that's why I just want to kind of talk about really quickly and kind of go through some very, very, very simple things from a coding perspective that you can have a dramatic impact on how someone engages with the email when using a screen reader. And the first one is the language tag. And it's actually a language attribute. And this language attribute can go in pretty much any HTML tag. And what the difference is, and unfortunately, I had an example, we couldn't get it to work with this webinar, but if you don't have a language tag in there, the screen reader will use its default language. And so if you're sending to someone in France and it's in English, it's going to interpret with the French accent in that French context. But if you have this very little attribute here where it's language English, the screen reader will take that and say, oh, this is in English, so I'll read it using the English accent. And it's mind-boggling how different, how crazy an experience that you can have with it. Again, very simple thing. The next one is this table presentation. Now, those of you that know HTML, tables, we have to use tables just because the support for HTML is sporadic through every email client, and that's the world I live in. Like Microsoft Office uses Word to render HTML emails, and so you can't use divs, you can't use CSS3, you can't do all this type of stuff within that because it just won't render properly. So we have to go back and use tables. And tables, the whole intent of it was to show tabular data, like what is it? An Excel spreadsheet. You have rows and columns, and you show data in that area. And so what happens with a screen reader, it will actually go through and say table 1, table row 1, table header, email, end table header, accessibility. It will go through all this stuff. But if you have this role presentation on it, this attribute, it will skip all that and go straight to the content. And if you can imagine, those of you that are coding these emails, if you have 20 tables, 10 of them are nested in each other, it will take forever to get through that email. And this is a simple, quick, easy way to do that and to help those people. And again, these things have no impact on rendering. The next thing is image blocking, right? And so when you talk about accessibility, this is actually really, really important. And so this M&M's email is a really good email. Like, I really like it from a design visual perspective. However, they failed with images turned off. And what that means is they also failed from an accessibility standpoint. No offense to anyone if anyone's with M&M's or affiliated with them. All I'm trying to do is just point out an example, because the screener, as they read this, they won't pick up anything in this email except the create gifts bulk last day, create a personalized gift for your Valentine. Nothing else is going to be picked up because they don't have any alt text, and that's so important from an accessibility perspective, because what will happen actually in that previous email, if you don't have an alt attribute defined in that image, it will read out that source, the source attribute. And you can imagine if you have link tracking or like even dynamic content, it will actually read clear.gif, and it will go through this whole thing. It will read out each character, and it's really actually a struggle. And so what I suggest everyone does is go back, and every image that they have, well, not everyone, but the ones that where you want to define some language around or give context to, put in that alt attribute. Now, if you don't, and there's a clear GIF or spacer or something that doesn't really need anything, put in a blank alt attribute like I have here in this example, because what happens is the screen reader will go and read this and will say, oh, well, it's empty, and it just skips it, versus if not having it all. And it has a dramatic impact on how people will interpret this email and what the call to actions are. And picture's worth 1,000 words. So how do you describe that picture in text? And there is no defined or a limit to alt text because it's hidden when you open the email. So you can be as descriptive as you want, but again, you just want to be mindful of how many images do you have in your email. And then I want to get into some design concepts. We just talked about code. So from a visual perspective, what can we do? How can we make it easier for people? And the first one is really, and this a lot takes the same concept of designing for mobile. It's really just making sure the fonts are legible. Don't go too small. Always keep a minimum of 14 pixels. And if you're using light fonts, always never go lower than 16 pixels. Because when I was on a train the other day, and I saw someone that was sitting there with an iPad, and they had it about 5 inches from their face, and they had it really zoomed up. And the problem is the text was so small that they couldn't really read it. And I had a whole conversation about it with that person because I was just so curious about how they engage with it. And another thing you want to kind of do is, and I know they're popular, is those thin and condensed fonts. Those are actually really bad from a visual perspective. If you want to use them, great. I'm not saying don't. Just be mindful of how they're represented. Like, where are they at? Where do they sit in the email? And that kind of goes into these context ratios. Like, if you use condensed, what is that contrast ratio? Is it clear to see it, or is it hard to see it? And so WCAG has these standards of, for normal text, it's 4.5 to 1. And so from a context, or from a contrast ratio, 1 to 1 is the same color, and 21 to 1 is the opposite color. So like black and white, that contrast ratio will be 21 to 1. Now for large text, you want it to be 3 to 1. And large text consists of any text that's 24 pixels or higher, or 18 pixels and bolded. Okay, so there's definitely some different contrast ratios based on the size of the text. And here are some examples of what some of those are. And you'll see that black on yellow, it passes both the small and large text, but you notice here the blue on orange. You might think it's valid, but from a small text perspective, it's not. It does not pass kind of the standards. And I hope to God no one's using the green on red or the red on green, because that's just incredibly difficult. There's almost the same color if you look at that, the contrast ratio there. And so again, it's just something to be mindful of about how you're designing that email, and how are people going to interpret it, and how are they going to read it from a text perspective. And that also goes into links. So like I mentioned before, is that red, green, and blue are the 3 most common colors. Well, blue is the default link color. And so what happens if you don't have that underlined, or if there is not some identifier that is a link or a call to action, whether it's a button, they're not going to see it. And that's the problem. If they can't see a certain color in those spectrums, they might even miss that main, not maybe the main call to action, but that link to try to engage them. And I know it's not pretty, I know it's not sexy, but as long as it's identifiable that it's a link, maybe you bold it, maybe you make it a little bit bigger, or you can even underline it if it fits the design. Again, it's just something to be mindful of. And then when you're using headings, this is becoming more and more popular within email design on the coding side, which is great. Just make sure you don't skip heading levels. This can be incredibly impactful from a screen reader perspective, because it will actually skip down and it won't know where to go next. So if it sees an H1, H3, H2, it will get confused and try to go back up and then try to find the next one. And so it just jumbles the content all around, and you won't get that clear message of what you're trying to say to your subscribers. Okay, and then the last one I have here is kind of the alignment of text. Now the alignment, like center alignment, when we looked at that dyslexic example or dyslexia example, it was tough to read. Now with center line text, it makes it even tougher because it makes it more difficult because things aren't, there's not a set delimiter on the left. And so I'm not saying to never use it. I think there's definitely instances where you can. Maybe it's single sentences or very short sentences, but like paragraphs like this, it makes it incredibly difficult. So just try to be mindful of it and just try to use the left alignment um, with your emails when there's long blocks of content. And then the last one, sorry, I forgot about this one. When we talk about email is not a conversion tool, it's a driver. And you just want to make sure if your email is accessible, is that your landing pages are as well. And here's a perfect example, which you have someone filling out a form, whether it's email acquisition or shopping cart or any type of thing, whether it's a webinar sign up, any type of thing that you want to do, you want to make sure there's some type of visual identifier of what's happening with those input boxes. And because a lot of times you'll see it where it's just red, it's highlighted red. Well, that's really bad from accessibility because again, those who can't see the color red won't know where the problem is. And so this is a really good example where you have complementary words, or you can have some type of visual element that says, hey, you need to look at this before you can continue. Because if you don't, they might not even be able to get past that form.
Thanks a lot, John. Those are great things to keep in mind. Kind of adding some of my own thoughts on some of the things that you brought up there. Sending out an all image email is not exactly following best practices. You want to use as much plain text in an email as possible, but I know a lot of companies still send out all image emails, and I'm fine with that as long as they use appropriate alt text, right? So if there's an image that says click here in the alt tag, it really should read click here and nothing else. But one
And there's
thing,
another point to that too, Jerry, is like from a accessibility, but also from a deliverability standpoint, all image designs are really bad because spam filters will say, hey, what are you trying to hide? And so we ran some tests with that. And so what you want to try to do is just make sure you at least maintain, at least at a bare minimum, at least 500 characters in your email that are visible with that.
that are plain text, are you saying?
Yep, that
Okay.
are not embedded in image. So that then, because we did this whole test and we started by just sending all images, and then we slowly added content. And what we found is right around 500 characters, which isn't that much. I mean, that's just based on the footer. Is that if you do that, then we started passing every filter that we have through that.
That's great to know. Um, and then it, if you do have an image heavy email, just make sure that you're not designing only for the desktop experience, because I get a lot of emails from very large companies that are all text, and it's disheartening to bring that email up on my mobile device on my phone, and they obviously designed the images, the text, and the call to action button only for desktop, because I bring it up on my phone and I can barely read it because the text shrinks down to be so small. So if you do send out a image heavy email, I highly suggest that you make sure that when the images shrink down to fit on a phone, that all of your text and, more importantly, your calls to action are still readable, uh, tappable. So definitely keep that in mind. And and then you brought up, and that kind of goes into font size, John, that you brought up. That that goes back to what I was saying earlier in this presentation here, where if you know that you're sending to an older audience, that comes in very that becomes very important, that you use text sizes that are at least 14 pixels, and if not bigger, because it's known, it's a fact that as you get older, you can't see as well. So you got to make sure that those older eyes can easily read your message without having to squint and go find their reader glasses and all that good stuff. So So that's all great stuff, John. Thanks a lot for
And
sharing
the
that.
baby boomers aren't getting any younger either. I mean, that's a
Right.
big population you have to think about too.
Hey, and this Gen Xer is getting older too, so you got to think about us too.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so let's think about the customer experience here. So uh, when it comes to designs, a well-designed email doesn't have to be heavy on the custom designs as long as it meets other criteria. And and again, you don't have to match all the criteria. Just make sure you're using what's appropriate for what you're sending out. What we have here are two separate emails from the Vermont Food Bank. The one on the left was sent at the end of December of 2016, and then the one on the right was sent at the end of December 2017. And they told their strategic advisor Peter that the one that they sent out just a few months ago outperformed the one that they sent at the end of 2016. So, and I looked at these two emails, and it's pretty obvious to me why. One of the reasons, anyway, one of the main reasons why this new email performed better is that we've got the branding at the top. So when someone opens up your email, they need to be able to see your branding in order to trust who this email is actually from. Um, Also, their donate button is at the top of the email, and they're using contrasting colors. It's very easy to see. It's basically the second thing you see, right? You see the Vermont Food Bank logo, then the donate button. And then also, and this is very important as well, the type of language that they're using and the message on the right, especially the headline, only one day left to give food in 2017. There's a sense of urgency being being uh, being added to the message, whereas the one on the left, there's not really that sense of urgency that the one on the right has. I actually think that if we were to combine these two emails, we'd kind of have almost perfect email, because I do love that image in the on the left side. I think that it really, being a parent, it really speaks to me, um, and it kind of makes me a little emotional, I guess. There's playing to emotion. So if they move that big image into the body somewhere on the message on the right, and maybe add some text to that image that kind of helps bolster their message, and then maybe add another call to action button somewhere towards the end of the message on the right, and I think we'd have a very very good email. Um, so responsiveness. It's just very important to think about the people who are reading your emails on their phone or on their tablet. Um, it's becoming more commonplace now that people do open up emails on their phones, on their small screens. So I think a little over half of all emails now are opened up on a smaller screen on a phone. So I think if that's not something that you're taking into consideration right now, I think you should start thinking about it. At the very least, maybe just create a one column email, but um, the emails that you create in iContext drag and drop editor come out of the box mobile responsive. So meaning that you can see how on the message on the left is the desktop version. You see the photo on the left, and then text and a call to action button on the right, to the right of the image. But on the mobile device on the phone, they stack, these two columns stack. So you can still easily see the image, but you can still easily read the text. And the call to action button is still very easily tappable with a finger. So definitely keep that in mind, responsiveness, especially if you have a younger audience. Um, and then taking it further, this is actually a making use of white space. This is something that John uh, shared with us when we were creating this webinar, and I think it's a great example of making use of white space. It's a very very easy concept, I think, once you actually see it, and it's easy to use. You're actually taking away a lot of the clutter, so you're making it easier to design and code as well. So adding white space does a great job of making your messages easier to read. It's a and it's an easy and creative way of delineating products from each other.
Yeah, now
So
if you don't mind, I just want to add on to that. It's like the one on the like the grocery coupon one. I have no idea what to do there. I
right,
don't know
right,
what it
yeah,
is. Are those ads on the right? Are they products? Like what is that?
yeah,
And so, and that's what I think too is like with a lot of people ask the question too is like how much can I put in an email? Well, you can like I mean, Reef did a really good job here. I mean, they put what is that 9 things and they have some call to actions.
uh-huh,
That's a good amount, but as long as you have white space and you get that hook into someone right away, you have like 8 seconds to really grab someone's attention.
mhm.
If you grab their attention, they're willing to scroll as long as they can understand the content and like what you said, like on the mobile, like we're all used to scrolling. We know it's going to happen because the horizontal width space is limited. But
Right.
really, this is one of the most common things I see from an email design perspective is not utilizing white space enough. And it's okay, let items breathe, let them breathe, let show people where you want them to go, right? So
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, it actually makes it easier to design and easier to code because you don't have nearly as much, you don't have nearly as many elements to have to worry about. And therefore, since it's easier design, easier code, it should render easier as well. Um, so I guess that brings us to Q&A. But one thing I guess I want to sum up what makes a well-designed email is keeping it as focused as possible, and also you want to make sure that the people, your subscribers, are are being prompted into an action. I guess is the best way to put it, the simplest way to put it. If they just read your email, that's great, but I think you would rather have them act on your email, either going to your online store, going to your blog, going to your Facebook page, and becoming a fan of your Facebook page. Anything that includes an action.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. It was a great presentation, and we've got a lot of questions that have come in. Feel free to keep asking questions in the question box, and I'm going to try to condense the ones I see repeated. And remember, if we don't have time for your questions during this webinar, then we'll try to address them in our follow-up email or blog post. So we got a whole bunch of questions here. I'm going to try to see if I can get some quick ones out for you. So for example, one question was, are text-only emails becoming more common and preferred by recipients, or is HTML still a good format?
I'll take that one. It depends. So if you're B2B, it might be text emails, right? But if you're B2C, it might be HTML. Now, HTML emails are they're way more popular because they're turned on by default. HTML is turned on by default. Now with that text only version, we can't track that. There's no way for us or anyone to track how many people are viewing an email from a text only perspective, whether that's the text alternative. From a branding perspective, I look at it this way: it's so easy to create a text alternative version. Like there's so many tools, we have them. There's free online tools out there that it takes literally like 3 or 4 minutes to do that. I would do it from a brand perspective because you never know. Would you rather communicate with everyone on your list or leave some people out? And that kind of goes to the accessibility side. So I still see HTML email as like widely more popular just because all email clients show it by default. But I would also not alienate those that are viewing it from a text only version.
Right. iContact does send out when you send out a message to our system, it does send out a plain text version as well for those that do have their email client set to accepting text only messages. So with our system that is taken care of.
Great. Here's a really, I thought this was a really interesting question. So, what are your thoughts on unique mobile content from both the consumer point of view and as the builder of the email? So, this is not just, you know, something stretching or stacking, but like some content is hidden or shown only in mobile or shown only in on a desktop.
Um, I can start off with that one. In our experience, we have created emails like that. And in our experience, unintended things happened. Like, like all of a sudden, Outlook was showing everything, right? Because because just the way it supports different. Every email client has a level of support of what it will support for CSS and HTML, and especially on the CSS part, the email clients seem like they're always changing what they will support and what they won't support. So if you know that you have mostly like iPhone users, then yeah, I would give that a try. But if you're not sure exactly who your subscribers are, or you're seeing that, well, you probably have more desktop subscribers than you do mobile subscribers. Um, then I think I would try and keep it as simple as possible and not try and get too cheeky with the email. But one thing that iContact does provide when you're tracking a message that you sent out, we do track um, the percentage of opens, how many of them were opened on a percentage that was opened on mobile devices, and a percentage of them were opened on desktop devices, computers. So that does help you to get to know your subscriber base a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you have mostly iPhone users, then go ahead and take chances. But just know that uh, the different email clients out there, it seems like they're always changing what they will support and what they won't. Like a good example of that is the Outlook app. I use an Android phone, and so I'm not exactly sure if this affected iPhone users or not. But a couple years ago, the Outlook app had full mobile support. It was fantastic. It was great. My emails looked exactly like they did on the iPhone. Then late November of 2015 or 2016, something like that, 2015, they all of a sudden Outlook pulled that support for mobile devices. And so for the last couple of years, the Outlook app was just kind of a not something that I really paid attention to that much. Then all of a sudden, a month ago, lo and behold, my emails are mobile responsive in the Outlook app again. So it's just constantly shifting. So you kind of need to keep that in mind.
Okay, and on that question, we actually had a question, and this has been the bane of my world too. Do you have any idea why can't the email and browser industry develop standards that will interpret the HTML and CSS code so they're uniformly presented as originally designed, kind of like you would on a browser?
I'll take that one. So, like someone just asked me this yesterday at a conference, and so here's the problem with that. I think the standards are going to get better. The problem, though, is the fundamental problem with that is that all these other corporations and all these clients, like the desktop clients in general, they're not supported anymore. So people are still using Outlook 2003. Now that one actually has pretty good support for HTML. However, it doesn't have CSS3 because Microsoft's not updating anymore. Outlook goes 2007, Apple Mail 9, Apple Mail 10. Those clients are no longer supported, but the problem is people are still using them on a wide scale because you look at like corporations or government, once they stick to something, they're going to use it for a long time. And so would I love standards, even the industry that I'm in? Absolutely. I would love to see that. And I would love to see it so that marketers can actually focus on things that actually drive, conversions and drive people and create emotions versus having to worry about getting an email to render properly. Absolutely. It's just the problem is it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years and years because Microsoft comes out with a new version every 2 years. So next year there's going to be Office 2019. What's going to happen with that? Well, they made no indication that they're going away from Microsoft Word from using their rendering app. So again, now you have another, what is this? We're already still dealing with 2007. So that's 11 years. So we're already looking at 10, 11, 15 years out before there's some uniformity. And that's a fundamental issue. Now, web-based clients like AOL, Gmail, Yahoo, all these other ones, absolutely, they can make those changes and they can get on the same page. Unfortunately, we're still gonna have to deal with those older legacy email clients.
Okay, thank you. So we had a couple questions about centering text. When are good times to center text versus, left justifying? Is there any time that's really good time to have centered text and make sure that it is legible to everybody?
So I think with that one, I think it all depends on how it's like where it's at in the email, what's around it. So if it's around a lot of white space, I would tend to say if it's like 3 or 4 sentences or more, I would tend to left justify that. Now, if it's a one sentence or a couple words, you know what I mean, then center it with the image, do whatever. But it's all about when you get into more longer context, like those newsletter emails examples that we showed. There was a lot of content there. If that's center aligned, that makes it really difficult to decipher it because it's smaller fonts and there's a lot of it. And so if there's bigger fonts, well, maybe then you can get away with center aligning it. Again, there's no perfect answer for that. It's all I'm trying to do is bring awareness to it and be mindful of when to do it, when not to, when you might feel like it's appropriate.
Okay, and how does that count for mobile as well?
It's the same thing. I tend to get migraines from time to time, and ever since that started happening, it's made my eyes more sensitive. And when when I see like a paragraph of text that's all center aligned, whether it's on mobile device or on a desktop, I have a hard time tracking from line to line. So, so I'm right there with John. If you've got like a paragraph of text, anything more than just a couple lines, then you should definitely left align it because it makes it much easier for people like me to read and to track it from line to line. So if you've got if you're selling a product and say you've got like a 3 column layout where you got three products all side by side, I think it's great to have the image to be center aligned and then like have a one line of the product name and then maybe one maybe 2 lines of product description and then a call to action button centered underneath that. And during the product description, if you've got more than 2 lines, um, it's going to look weird if you all of a sudden left align that when everything else is center aligned. So from a design perspective, I think I would, and be able to keep it readable, I would try and condense that description text to no more than 2 lines. But for me personally, no matter if it's on a smartphone or on a computer, if it's center aligned and it's like a paragraph of text, it's very hard for me to track to be able to read that line, that text from line to line. And that also goes for putting white text on a black background. I can't even do that because it sometimes it does set off a migraine right away.
Okay, we had a lot of people mentioning the role equals presentation. This was a new tip to me as well, and a lot of people really liked it. We had one question saying, when adding the role equals presentation to an email for accessibility, do you need to add that to every nested table in the email or just the main wrapper table?
Every single one, every table you need to add it to.
I did not know that either.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
John.
so because it will go down or read it and like, oh, there's a table, and then it will go. Like, so you have to add it to every single one.
That's good to know. Another one for John. Is there a tool in email on Acid or elsewhere to test contrast ratios? We had a lot of people interested in that.
So There is. So we have a tool right now that's in private beta. It's all about accessibility. And so everything that we talked about today, this tool will go through and check all that stuff for you. The links, the contrast ratio, it will automatically add all the table role presentations. It will allow you to update the alt text and will tell you, is alt text the same? Is it duplicated? All that type of stuff. So in the language tag, the title tag, all that type of stuff, you'll be able to do within that tool. It's currently in private beta right now.
Oh, great to know. So since we're talking about a lot of those details, can you also please confirm the recommended font size range, the minimum to the maximum for best accessibility?
Yeah, I think it's from like never go below 14. That's, I mean, I would never do that. I know like some footers and stuff they do, like from, you'll see it from healthcare, like from HIPAA compliance and all that type of stuff. A general rule though is for the main content, the main source that you're trying to get at, never go below 14 pixels.
Okay, and I'm going to try to hopefully wrap this up with the text and images. Do you have any insights or data on using image and text ratio and what kind of ratio works best?
That again, it kind of just all depends on what the email is about and what message you're trying to get across. What we did find though is that again, it's at 500 characters. As long as you have 500 characters in the email, that like we found that that's when we started passing all the email filters. When you get below that, that's when you have a problem. Again, it's all about what's the message you're trying to get across. And I know retail is super, super heavy on graphics. We saw in that example that Apple email, like they're super heavy on graphics, which is okay. People understand it, people get it. Is just want to make sure that there's some like readable text. When I say readable, like actual text in the email, so that you can avoid some of those filters and also give context to screen readers as well.
Okay, I've got a question for Jerry, especially knowing eye contact's background here. Do you have any suggestions on email design specifically for nonprofits, such as what's the best way to convert or ask people to donate without pushing people to unsubscribe? How do you delicately handle that?
That's a good question. I think I would just try and keep it as focused as possible, but also kind of maybe I guess I would add parts of the email of how the where the money's going or how successful last year was, showing them the benefits of donating to them. I think makes people feel uh, probably better about donating, but I would uh, I would keep it just as focused as possible on on the donation part.
And I know this one's a question for John. What are your thoughts of adding animation to your messages, such as animated GIFs, especially knowing that Outlook won't render it?
Oh, I love animated GIFs, and I think a lot of people do too. The only caveat is I would use it sparingly and using it where you really want to draw attention. Because from a brand perspective, you send out every email and there's an animated GIF, it's going to get stale. It's not going to carry the effect as it would if you use it sparingly and very targeted and very strategic about how you're doing it. Because we've seen that it's like I think the statistic is right around like 30% increase in unique clicks on the animated GIF. And so they're still supported. You just want to make sure in Outlook that when you do create that the animated within the animated GIF, the very first frame contains that call to action. So that because it's kind of like that progressive enhancement, is that with Outlook it still shows the image. It's just it doesn't show the animation. So the first frame, you want to make sure you have the call to action, and then those clients that do support, you'll see the animation. But that first frame will go so fast that those that see the animation won't even notice it. But I absolutely I think it's beneficial because people aren't expecting when they open up an email to see movement. And I think that's where if you do it
Right.
sparingly, it can have a really big impact.
Yeah. We are definitely getting more and more requests to create animated GIFs for our customers, and and it's very important that the entire intent of that animated GIF is present in the first frame for those Outlook users. Also, we're starting to get some requests for video in an email. That is possible. In fact, the method that I use is I took from a email and asset blog post, and uh, a couple things to keep in mind if you want to put a video in an email, that only Apple products will play the video in the email. So if you know your subscriber base is mostly iPhone or iPad or MacBook users, definitely give video a try. And if you use the method that I use from the Email and Asset blog, it will play natively in the email for Apple users, and for those that don't use Apple devices, when they click on the big play arrow that's on the video, what'll happen is they'll be taken to the actual video on your website. One thing you need to keep in mind, though, is the video has to be in an MP4 format, and you'll have to host that on your own web server. So it'll be a pretty good, a decent experience for most everybody, but it'll be a fantastic experience for your Apple users. But that's something that is starting to slowly creep up, the amount of requests that we're getting to add video to email.
Okay, and we are pretty much, we've run over. I see that. I'm going to ask one more question before we wrap up. I know there are a whole bunch of other questions that have not been answered. Don't worry, we've got a list of that. We'll try to get to those either in email or a blog post later. But I just want to have one more question. Since we're talking about all the different things that you want to do, obviously testing is a big thing for everybody. So what is the best thing to test when you're just starting? So subject line, your call to action, your layout, your images. What do you guys recommend for a beginner email marketer to start testing on first? What kind of progression would you want to see?
I look at it this way. So what I would suggest is that, hey, start with the easy wins first. And then as you get better at it, then you can start taking the more complex stuff. Because that's one thing that I'm seeing a lot is there's all these new technologies and all this stuff out there, it's fantastic. Like it's really, I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with email. The problem is though that when people that are just starting the industry or just getting involved in email marketing, they feel like they need to run before they walk. And so what I would suggest is do subject lines. Get to understand your subscriber base, because every subscriber base is different, and really do those little things that work for them or what triggers that emotion or that response from them, because there's interest in your brand, there's interest in your product, whatever it is, because they opted in. And so it's really trying to figure that out. And I would start, the simple things first. Maybe it's images, maybe it's, the subject line, maybe it's, the time of day that you send it out. To really try to figure out that sweet spot, and then slowly starting to build up with that. Maybe adding animations in there for animated GIFs, doing an A/B test, see how they react, see how they respond. Maybe they don't respond well, or maybe you can't track it. So then you slowly evolve instead of jumping in, trying to jump in the deep end. That would be my suggestion. The quick wins first.
Right. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is, so when, with iContact, you can create a sign up form in your account, and then you can take that code and put it on your website. And with that sign up form, no matter what sign up form process you're using or whose application you're using, it's very important to be honest and transparent about what you're going to do with that email address, and then keep yourself to that, right, of what you told your customers. So when they do receive an email from you, they're not surprised. They're not saying, well, why am I getting an email from this person? And then when they do open the email, make sure it's branded somehow. So you build that trust. Not only are you sending out emails that they expect from you, when they do open the email, they know for sure that it's from you because you've branded it properly. And then then I think, as John said, start with those small wins first and build up. And I think over time um, you'll see more and more wins. And I think using the concepts that John and I talked about in the webinar here of using simple strategies and simple design blocks, building blocks, I think taking that into combination will, I think you'll see yourself succeed over the long run.
Okay, thank you, John and Jerry. Everybody remember, we will be sending out an email with a link to the recording and a link to the slide deck, along with some other information. We'll do our best to answer some more questions. I expect that email to be going out early next week. And so if you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. So again, thank you, John and Jerry, for your time and expert advice. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and for your interest in both eye contact and email on acid. And for other Marketing Insights webinars, you can visit our website at eyecontact.com and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.